So why do you ask? So this is about handling ethical questions well. You may have already discovered that in various social contexts, people discover you're a doctor or a dentist, and all of a sudden you're an expert on everything, and they want your opinion, and people throw questions at you. And so I want to throw some thoughts at you about how you handle that. And as already been mentioned, you probably do this with a bit of trepidation because you've probably had conversations go horribly wrong, where somebody asked a question and you thought that it was like a rational discussion of a theological thing and you're really interested in that, and you sort of launch, and then all of a sudden they're yelling at you, or they're crying, or they never talk to you again, or they recruit all their friends to take you out, and you have no idea what went so horribly wrong. And let me give you some thoughts about how you not go there, because I certainly have had lots of those situations, and you probably have too. So the key thing for me is to understand where somebody's coming from when they ask the question, who they're aiming that at, because I wear various hats, what experiences are they bringing to that, and what worldview are they bringing to that. And once I understand all of that, then maybe I can actually answer their question. And of course, the best way to start exploring that is to ask them some questions in return. So Jesus was very good at answering a question with a question. Most rabbis are, and actually you'll discover that most of the profs that you think are amazing seem to ask a lot more questions than they answer questions, and that's a good thing to do first. So one of the questions we'll use as our example, what do you think about contraception? So I've been asked this by Christian medical students, I've been asked this by non-Christian medical students, I've been asked this by little old ladies in church pews. This is a question I get a lot. I'm an OBGYN. People know that I am into ethics, and so they will launch this big question at me. And this can go 100 different directions, and it really helps to ask some further questions of them before I launch into answering what I think about contraception. So the first question I'll generally ask is, who are you asking? I mean, you're asking me, but are you asking me because you know I'm a physician? I'm an OBGYN, and you want some sort of medical discussion of the risks and benefits of each of these things? Are you asking me because you know that I occasionally teach medical students, and so you're looking for free to get a 10-minute session on the science of contraception? Are you asking this because you know I teach Sunday school to adults, and so you'd like a 10-minute session on the theology of contraception in whatever particular faith background you find yourself in? Do you want 5 minutes on what Catholics think about contraception, or what Muslims think about contraception, or what Jews think about contraception? Because I've got all that in my head and I'm happy to share it with you. Maybe that's what you want. Or maybe you're asking me as a friend. Maybe you've had something go horribly wrong in your life, or maybe you're making a very personal decision and you perceive that I am safe, and so you want to have a very personal discussion about contraception. So who are you asking? What hat do you want me to wear while I answer your question? And interesting, I've had a few people say, well, let's start with you wearing this hat, but I also want to hear what you say wearing that hat. And so sometimes they'll like, let's go with A, but then I also want it from another perspective, and that can be a really fun conversation. But having a clear sense of who are you asking is very, very helpful. The next thing I generally try to figure out is, what are they hoping happens next? So I kind of think of social interactions in 4 categories that all start with D, and knowing what they want this social interaction to be is very helpful. So the first possibility is that they're looking for a dictate. They're either looking to dictate to me, or they want to dictate from me. In the context of a dictate, what you're expecting is someone will just dump knowledge in your general direction. You, the other person, are irrelevant to the situation. You are just the receiver of information, and someone's just going to dump information in your direction. And this is a quite effective, like when the public health person this week was getting up and telling us things, she wasn't all that interested in an in-depth dialogue about our thoughts and feelings. She was telling us this is how the world is now. Fire alarms, in my life, a code 777, which is an obstetrical emergency. I expect everyone to arrive looking for a dictate. And so if I get the sense that what you want is to dictate at me, which is certainly what lots of people like to do in social interactions, and I am at my best emotionally and have the time, then I'll let you do that. And you will feel that I'm a kind and caring and compassionate person because I gave you 10 minutes for you to tell me everything you thought about contraception. and they'll walk away hopefully having the impression that I'm someone that's good to talk to because I listened. But if that's what they want to do, and I try to send anything their direction, it's going to go horribly wrong. And so dictate maybe what they want to do. They might want to debate. So if in a debate, I'm interested in your ideas so that I can understand them well enough to refute them. So I care to hear from you so I can prove that you are wrong. And you care to hear from me so that you can prove that I am wrong. And if it's somebody that you feel very safe with, this can be really effective to explore an issue. So I've certainly been at academic conferences where somebody throws up a proposition and you can very efficiently move through all the pros and cons of a given situation. And if it's safe, it can be wonderful. And so maybe they're interested in a debate. And if that's the case, maybe I'll just argue against whatever they're in favor of, not because I believe that, but because that's what they're after. And they'll have a great, wonderful time and think I'm a wonderful person because I was willing to debate. So maybe they're interested in a discussion. So in a discussion, I'm interested in your ideas because I might learn something from them, right? Again, I'm not so interested in you, but your discussion with me might help me grow and learn. And so I care about what you think because that might help me. So maybe what they're after is a discussion, and I can play that role in their life for a few minutes. Dialogue is the most inefficient in terms of information transfer, but is probably the best way to grow emotionally closer to another human being. So dialogue is about, I don't really care about your ideas nearly as much as I care about you. So tell me your ideas, tell me what you think about the world so that I can get to know you better. And I'll tell you what I think about the world so you can know me better, but it's getting to know each other that is what we really care about. And certainly if you think it's a dialogue and the other person thinks it's a dictate, it's going to go pretty poorly because you're both going to be coming at this from a completely different place. So another question I will ask is the question, which is the title of the talk, why do you ask? And I have found that people generally ask for a few reasons. And if I understand the reason, that can be helpful. So let's walk through these. So the first one is, it might just be a test. I'm being asked what I think about contraception because they want to know what box to put me in. So they've interacted with this doctor. They found that I might be a Christian. They're trying to find out if I'm holding the correct view or not, because if I'm holding the correct view, then I can be recruited to their cause. And if I'm not holding the correct view, then I need to be corrected, or maybe I'm just a lost cause and they can move on with their life. So that's just a test. And they want to find out what box I'm in. If I get the sense that that's what a person wants to do, I'll generally refuse to answer their question in any way, shape, or form, because I don't want to put me in a box, and I'll just keep asking questions back to them until they get frustrated and leave, which keeps them engaged, because I don't want to be categorized, and I'm not going to submit to their testing. So it might just be a test, and if that's the case, you're just going to pass or you're going to fail. Probably better to try to gently challenge them in some way, but don't let them put you in a box. Or, again, being a Christian in various social settings, you might be looking for a very pastoral answer. So what do you think about contraception? Might be about the fact that they had an unintended pregnancy and somebody hurt them because of a choice that they made. And what they're looking for is almost like a counselor or a kind pastor or someone who is looking out for the wounded sheep to pick it up and put salve on its wounds. And that's what they need. And if I miss that, and if I go with the philosophical when it was about the personal, I might just wound them more deeply. Maybe you are interested in a theological thing. Maybe you are interested in, I've heard that Protestants and Catholics have different understandings of contraception, and I'm really interested in where that comes from. And I'm not actually in a relationship, and contraception is irrelevant to my life other than as a theological abstraction. And so we can go there. And of course, if you're interacting with somebody who does not come from any faith background, they're probably looking for a philosophical answer. So let's talk about contraception as it helps us understand human sexuality, and let's quote Socrates and Aristotle and the philosophers rather than scripture. And if somebody's looking for something philosophical and you go all pastoral on them, it won't be a very productive interaction. The other thing that ethics often has is standards, how we ought to behave. And it's helpful, I found it helpful anyways, to say, are you asking what the rules are for contraception that I've chosen for myself, that I have worked through myself? Is this mainly a dialogue about me? Are you talking about how I think my family should behave? Are you talking about how I think my faith community should behave? Are you talking about how I think society should behave? So if I launch into a discussion about the rules around contraception that I have chosen for myself, and you think that I'm saying all of society should behave the same way, that may go seriously wrong. Because how dare I impose my view on all of society when I thought I was only talking about me and not society as a whole? So what group are we talking about in terms of whose standards this is going to apply to? Another aspect of this is, are you talking about what I expect of myself and others? Are you talking about what I've actually achieved and experienced? Or are you talking about what's aspirational? So in terms of contraception, are you talking about, well, I expect everyone to behave this way? Or are you talking about my personal experiences with and what I've seen in patients in terms of what they've experienced? Or am I talking about something that I think we should all aspire to, but we know that we're going to fail to achieve on a regular basis? Because certainly if you're talking aspirations and somebody thinks you're talking expectations, they may feel quite condemned because they have failed to achieve this thing that they think is an expectation, when in your mind, of course, everyone fails to achieve this thing. We're talking about aspirations, not expectations. The final warning would be coming back to worldview. So as we've already talked about, worldview is terribly important. And I think most people who are the dominant worldview don't actually understand that they have a worldview, because doesn't everybody just think this way? So what I think about contraception works out of what I think about human sexuality, which works out about what I think about the nature of what a human being is, which works out from what I think the nature of the universe is, which works out from what I think the nature and character of God is. So what I think about the birth control pill, actually, there's a whole bunch of steps before I get there. And if we end up talking about the birth control pill, and you assume that all of the previous things that have gotten there, I believe the same as you. We're talking about the birth control pill, and I'm coming at it from a place where we are created lovingly in the image of God, and you think that we emerge by chance from a primordial ooze, what I say with the birth control pill is not going to make any sense at all, because we have completely different understandings of the universe. And I've actually said that. I've said, I think before we can talk about the birth control pill, we need to understand that you and I have completely different understandings of the nature of the universe and the place of humanity in it. And so I don't know that anything I'm going to say makes any sense. Can we understand how we differ in those areas before we get into this thing that you really want to talk about? Because again, ideally, we all want civil and rational discussions about the facts after we've had time to gather them in a methodological way and had time to reflect on them. That's what we really all kind of like to do. And so at the end of the day, we're all still friends. And unfortunately, you've all had conversations, as I said off the top, that didn't go that way. Finding out an awful lot about the situation before you answer the question can be incredibly helpful. So I'm happy to take questions by email after this is all done. I have a website. I say the best way to do this is to role play it. So if you perceive that there's something you're going to wrestle with in terms of talking to a patient or a colleague, find a friend, imagine every scenario, say the words out loud, practice it with each other. One of you pretend to be evil and awful, and the other one manage that, and practice it so that you're not saying these things for the very first time in the context of a patient interaction.